The war between Israel and Palestine has been on people's minds for years now, maybe even decades. This morning, as I often do, I was contemplating the state of the war and of other major global events happening, and I realized that I don't fully understand why the two nations are at war. So I wanted to learn more about that. So I turned to ChatGPT to find answers as to how the war started, why the war continues, and what the ideologies for the war are, and the reasoning for this claim that it may never end. So I found it really interesting, and I wanted to share it with you as I don't have any particular bias for either side. I'm someone who believes that war never leads to anything positive, and I guess you could say I am anti-war, pro-peace, and so whatnot. I also understand that life is more nuanced and there are relationships that have been going on for thousands of years that are more complicated that I don't have a lot of information on. I do stand firm in my belief that peace is the way. However, I wanted to educate myself on this issue because a lot of people online say if you're not talking about it, then, you're ignorant. And I know a lot of you don't know the details. So I went to ChatGPT and wanted to share this conversation with you. So I'm going to read to you the prompt that I asked ChatGPT. And in case you're wondering, I'm talking to ChatGPT 4. Can you please explain in an unbiased way the origins of the conflict between Israel and Palestine? I want clear facts, no speculation, no bias. If there is something you don't know, please simply state that you don't know it and why you don't know it. Thank you. Always be polite to your AI before they dominate the world. And this was ChatGPT's response. The conflict between Israel and Palestine is deeply rooted in history, involving a complex interplay of religious, political, and cultural elements. Here is a factual overview of the origins of the conflict. So it then gives 5 points, okay? The first point, late 19th century, early 20th century. The origins of the conflict can be traced back to the late 19th century during a period marked by the rise of national movements, including Zionism and Arab nationalism. Zionism emerged as a movement among European Jews to establish a national homeland in response to the widespread anti-Semitism and persecution. The preferred location for this homeland was Palestine, where there had been continuous Jewish presence over the centuries, albeit as a minority. 2. British Mandate period, from 1917 to 1948. During World War I, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917, expressing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people. That was in quotations, that's why I did it. In Palestine, which was then an Ottoman region with a large Arab majority. Post-war, the League of Nations granted Britain the mandate over Palestine, which included the responsibility to implement the Balfour Declaration. This led to increased Jewish immigration to the area, heightening tensions between Jewish and Arab communities. 3. United Nations Partition Plan, 1947. After World War II and the Holocaust, the plight of Jews seeking refuge increased international support for Zionism. In 1947, unable to reconcile Jewish and Arab aspirations, Britain referred the Palestine question to the United Nations, which proposed partitioning Palestine into independent Arab and Jewish states and an internationalized Jerusalem. The Jewish leaders accepted the plan, but Arab leaders rejected it, arguing it was unfair to the Arab majority living in Palestine. 4. Establishment of Israel and the Arab-Israeli War, 1948. In May 1948, the State of Israel was declared. This was immediately followed by war between the new state and its Arab neighbors. As a result of the war, Israel expanded its territory beyond the proposed UN partition borders, and the conflict led to significant displacement of Palestinian Arabs, an event Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, or catastrophe. 5. Continuing conflict. Since 1948, there has been continued conflict characterized by several ways: 2 Palestinian intifadas, or uprisings, and ongoing disputes over land settlement and the status of refugees, among other issues. The conflict is further complicated by international involvement, internal divisions within both Israel and Palestinian societies, and changes in the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. There are nuances and details in the history of this conflict that involve deep-seated beliefs and contested narratives, which continue the ongoing challenges in resolving it. Some aspects of the conflict's history are subject to different interpretations and disputes, including the intentions and actions of various leaders and groups involved. I thought that brought a lot of insight to the situation, but it didn't really answer my question fully. I wanted to know why both sides really felt that they were entitled to this land, and thus so entitled to continue this war. So I asked, can you please explain what these deep-seated beliefs are for both sides? This was ChatGPT's response. The deep-seated beliefs that fuel the Israel-Palestine conflict for both Israelis and Palestinians involve historical, religious, and nationalistic elements. These beliefs are often intertwined and form the core of each side's narrative and claim to the land. First, we're going to go over Israeli beliefs, and it gave 3 of them. Number 1, historical and religious connection. Many Israelis believe in a historical and religious connection to the land of Israel, which is considered the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people. This belief is rooted in biblical narratives where the land of Israel is promised to the descendants of Abraham through Isaac and Jacob. Key locations such as Jerusalem, Hebron, and Bethlehem hold profound religious significance in Judaism. 2. Legacy of persecution. The history of Jewish persecution, culminating in the Holocaust, underpins a fundamental belief in the necessity of a safe and secure Jewish homeland where Jews can self-govern and defend themselves from existential threats. 3. Legal and international validation. The establishment of Israel is seen as legally and internationally sanctioned, starting with the Balfour Declaration in 1917, followed by the League of Nations mandate and the UN's partition plan in 1947, which led to Israel's Declaration of Independence in 1948. Now let's look at Palestine's beliefs. And ChatGPT also offered 3 points for those. 1. Indigenous rights. Palestinians hold in their long-standing connection to the land and its indigenous people, emphasizing a continuous presence in the territory now comprising Israel and the Palestinian territories for centuries. They view the creation of Israel as a colonial project that resulted in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Nakba. 2. Right of return and justice. A central belief is the right of return for Palestinian refugees who were displaced in 1948 and their descendants. This is seen as a fundamental right and a necessary condition for justice and peace. 3. National aspiration. Similar to Zionist aspirations for a Jewish homeland, Palestinian nationalism seeks self-determination and the establishment of an independent state in the territories of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, with East Jerusalem as its capital. The belief is grounded in the principles of national self-determination and resistance against occupation, shared and contested spaces. Both Israelis and Palestinians place deep religious and historical importance on Jerusalem. For Jews, it is the site of the ancient temples and the eternal capital of Israel. For Muslims, Jerusalem is a home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Oh, I'm sorry if I said that wrong. The third holy site in Islam. For Christians, the city is significant as the location of major events in the life of Jesus. The city's status and its holy sites remain one of the most contentious issues in the conflict. These beliefs, deeply ingrained and supported by religious, historical, and cultural narratives, contribute to the enduring nature of the conflict, complicating efforts at reconciliation and peace. Each side's narrative is supported by its own interpretation of history and justice, making compromise difficult. It's a lot to take in. And what I got from this is Palestinians have been there for as long as we could remember and what's written in our actual histories, whereas the Jewish people have some ancient religious texts that say that they have the right to this homeland and that is their true ancestry. And I guess we don't have any written texts on if that was the case, the transition between the Jewish people and the Palestinians or the Arabs and what happened there. But so here I have more questions. So I asked ChatGPT the following. By what you have shown me, it seems that Israel's claim on territory is based solely on the Bible. Can you please speak more into this? This was ChatGPT's response. The basis of Israel's claimed territory is not solely rooted in biblical narratives, although these narratives are significant to many in justifying the Jewish connection to the land. The modern state of Israel's territorial claims and its establishment also rely on historical, legal, and international factors that extend beyond religious texts. Here's a breakdown of these elements. So it gives 4 points. So number 1, historical connection. The connection of Jewish people to the land of Israel dates back thousands of years, with archaeological evidence supporting the presence of ancient Jewish kingdoms in the region. This historical connection is often cited alongside religious texts to understand the continuous presence and the special significance of the land to the Jewish people. 2. International mandate and legal framework. Modern political claims to the land have also been shaped significantly by developments during the 20th century. It gives 3 examples. The first is the Balfour. Well, I'm not going to read through these again because it's something that's already been iterated before, but basically ChatGPT mentions the Balfour Declaration of 1917 again, the League of Nations Mandate in 1920 again, and the United Nations Partition Plan in 1947 again. Then he moves on to the third point, survival and security concerns. The modern Zionist movement, which led to the foundation of Israel, was heavily influenced by the persecution of Jews in Europe, culminating in the Holocaust. The establishment of a secure homeland where Jews could defend themselves and exercise self-determination was a central aim. And then the fourth point is legal and sovereign actions. Upon declaration of the state in 1948, Israel was recognized by numerous countries and subsequently gained admission to the United Nations in 1949. These actions provided a legal international framework for its existence as a state. So this is the summary to that point that ChatGPT was making. While religious claims are significant, particularly for certain segments of Israeli society, including religious nationalists, the broader national claims are supported by a combination of historical rights, international actions, and security needs. These elements together make the case for Israel's establishment and its ongoing territorial claims more multifaceted than solely religious justifications. So I found that the historical proof was still a little vague, so I asked it for more evidence. Can you speak more into the historical evidence that supports the Jewish claim of the land? Please give clear examples and speak in detail. So ChatGPT responded, the historical evidence supporting the Jewish connection to the land of Israel includes archaeological findings, ancient texts, and other historical documentation that illustrate the Jewish presence and governance in the region dating back thousands of years. Here are some specific examples. Jerusalem. Archaeological excavations in and around Jerusalem have unearthed numerous artifacts and structures that confirm the city's central role in ancient Jewish civilization. For instance, there's the City of David. Excavations in this area, believed to be the original nucleus of ancient Jerusalem, have revealed remnants from a period of King David, who is traditionally credited with founding the city as the capital of his kingdom at around 1000 BCE. Then there's the Second Temple. The Western Wall in Jerusalem, a remnant of the Second Temple, is a central site for Jewish worship and pilgrimage, dating back to the expansion of the Temple Mount by Herod the Great around 19 BCE. Then there's the second point of evidence, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls. Discovered in the mid-20th century near Qumran, these scrolls include texts written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek containing some of the oldest known surviving copies of the Hebrew Bible texts, dating from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE. They provide evidence of Jewish religious and communal life in the region. Then it gives example of historical texts, biblical narratives. So the Hebrew Bible, Tanakh, details the history of the Jewish people and their ties to the land of Israel, starting with the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and continuing with the Exodus from Egypt, the conquest and settlement under Joshua, and the establishment of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. 2. External sources. Reference to ancient Israel and Judah are also found in Assyrian, Babylonian, and Egyptian texts. For example, the Merenpa Stele, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, which is Egypt, estimated to be from 1200 BCE. This inscription by the Egyptian pharaoh Merneptah mentions Israel in a list of conquests in the region, indicating its presence as a group or entity distinct from its neighbors. Then there's the Mesa Stele, Moab, 9th century BCE. This monument, erected by King Mesa of Moab, describes conflicts with the Kingdom of Israel. Scholarly and historical recognition. The connection of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is widely recognized in historical and scholarly circles, not merely as a matter of religious belief, but as a well-documented historical phenomenon. This connection has been a cornerstone of Jewish identity and culture throughout the centuries, influencing the development of Zionism in the modern era as a movement for Jewish national self-determination. These examples illustrate the multifaceted historical basis for the Jewish claim to the land, encompassing religious, cultural, and national dimensions, and supported by a broad array of evidence from various fields including archaeology, history, and textual analysis. So, I mean, that's a lot to take in. So there's two cultures, one that has all this historical evidence saying that this land is their origins, and on the other side, we have this other culture who claims to have ties to the indigenous peoples because they have been there for as long as we could remember. So it's tough, right? I don't have a solution for this, and I don't have any more personal information to give because I am still in a place of learning about this conflict and what it means for the entire world and what the implications are. I honestly can't see either side winning in the end, so to say, and obviously I think a compromise needs to happen. I think a true compromise can only be brought about by the two individual parties agreeing on their own without the sanctions of outside nations. I mean, I'm not a politician, but I mean, if two people are forced to agree on something, are they really agreeing, right? That's what happened before with the whole partition state. So that didn't work, and because we could see what's happening now. So just out of curiosity, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT what they think the solution for the, if they were in charge of the world, what they would do as a solution for the war. Hey, ChatGPT, as per our conversation we were just having about the war of Israel versus Palestine, I want to ask you, if you were in charge of the entire world, how would you resolve this conflict?
Resolving the Israel-Palestine conflict is a profoundly complex challenge that has eluded numerous leaders and international efforts over the years. If I were to conceptualize an approach, the focus would be on a few key principles aimed at long-term peace and stability. 1. Dialogue and engagement. Encourage ongoing dialogue between Israeli and Palestinian leaders, with a focus on building mutual understanding and trust. This would involve regular meetings, facilitated by neutral international mediators who are respected by both sides. 2. Two-state solution. Work towards a viable two-state solution, which has been a long-standing international consensus as the most feasible solution to ensure both peoples can live in peace, security, and dignity. This would involve recognized and secure borders based on negotiations that take into account the needs and security concerns of both sides. 3. Security guarantees. Provide robust security guarantees to both Israelis and Palestinians. This could involve international peacekeeping forces to help monitor and stabilize the region during the transition phases of any agreement. Economic stability can contribute significantly to political stability. 5. Refugee and right of return issues. Address the sensitive issue of Palestinian refugees, including their right to return, compensation, and resettlement options based on international law and agreements negotiated between the parties. 6. Jerusalem. Address the complex status of Jerusalem with creative diplomacy, aiming to respect the historical and religious significance of the city to all involved religious communities. This might involve special international status or shared administrative responsibilities. 7. Cultural and educational programs. Foster joint cultural and educational programs to promote mutual understanding and reconciliation among the younger generations. This can help alter narratives and build a foundation for lasting peace. 8. International support and legal frameworks. Secure international support and legal frameworks to ensure that agreements are respected and implemented. This would involve the United Nations, major global powers, and regional stakeholders. 9. Transparency and accountability. Implement mechanisms for transparency and accountability in the peace process. This includes oversight by the international community to ensure that both sides adhere to their commitments. Each of these steps involves considerable challenges and requires compromise and goodwill from both Israelis and Palestinians, as well as support from the international community. The goal would be to create conditions where both nations can coexist peacefully and prosperously, respecting each other's sovereignty and rights.
For all the world's families impacted by this horrible conflict, my heart goes out to you.